Hello, friends, and welcome to a story that speaks to the heart of justice, dignity, and the power of standing firm. This is a tale of one man's quiet strength in the face of injustice, a moment that rippled through a community and a nation, reminding us all that unity and accountability can reshape even the most broken systems. Let's dive into the story of Colonel Marcus Evans, a man whose resolve changed the course of history on a quiet Virginia street. The sun beat down on the sleepy suburb of Fairview, Virginia, its June warmth coating the asphalt in a shimmering haze. The neighborhood of Willow Creek was a patchwork of modest homes, their lawns dotted with kids' bikes and flower beds. At the curb, a sleek black SUV idled, its engine purring softly. Inside sat Colonel Marcus Evans, a 52-year-old African-American Army officer, his deep green uniform crisp, adorned with 3 silver stars on his shoulder. His name tag read Evans, and the insignia of the U.S. Army Strategic Command gleamed subtly. He wasn't here to make a statement, just to pick up his nephew, Tyler, who was finishing his final day at a local youth leadership program. Marcus's eyes were fixed on the apartment complex across the street, where Tyler had texted he'd be out in 5 minutes. The AC hummed through a cracked window, blending with the faint scent of polished leather and starched fabric. Marcus sat upright, hands resting on his thighs, his posture a testament to decades of discipline forged in conflicts from Kandahar to Mosul. He wasn't scrolling his phone or fidgeting, just waiting, calm and present, as if the world could pause for him. At the street's end, a police cruiser rolled into view, its tires crunching against the pavement. No sirens, no lights, just a slow, deliberate approach. It stopped abruptly, a few yards ahead of Marcus's SUV. Out stepped Officer Daniel Harper, a 29-year-old patrolman with a buzz cut and mirrored sunglasses that hid his eyes. His badge read, Fairview Police, Harper. Without checking the license plate or scanning the surroundings, Harper's gaze zeroed in on Marcus, sitting alone in a high-end vehicle. To Harper, the equation was simple: a black man in a nice car in a quiet neighborhood equaled suspicion. Marcus noticed the officer's approach but didn't flinch. He'd faced this before: border checkpoints in Iraq, tense encounters in civilian life. His hands stayed visible, resting calmly, a silent signal of compliance without surrender. Harper strode to the driver's window, his right hand hovering near his holster, his left flipping open a notepad he barely glanced at. No greeting, no question, just a heavy silence that seemed to demand submission. "What are you doing here?" Harper's voice was sharp, laced with an authority that felt more personal than procedural. Marcus met his gaze, steady and unyielding. "I'm waiting for my nephew," he said, his tone even, neither defensive nor confrontational. "I'm legally parked, officer. No laws broken." His words carried the weight of someone who knew the law as well as he knew the battlefield. Harper's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to calm defiance, to someone who didn't shrink under his stare. "ID now," he snapped, his hand inching closer to his Glock. Marcus didn't move. "I'm not operating the vehicle, officer. Under Virginia law, you need probable cause to demand identification in this context." His voice was a quiet anchor, grounded in principle. The air grew thick, the summer heat pressing down like a held breath. Harper leaned closer, his sunglasses reflecting Marcus's unblinking eyes. "I'm the law here," he growled, his voice low and edged with contempt. "You don't tell me what I need." His fingers brushed the holster strap, a warning Marcus read instantly. Across the street, a woman paused on her porch, her phone raised, recording. A teenager on a bike slowed, his eyes darting between the officer and the soldier. Marcus exhaled slowly, his hands still on his thighs. "I'm Colonel Marcus Evans, U.S. Army," he said, his voice clear, deliberate. "I've served this country for 30 years. I know my rights, and I'm asking you to state your legal grounds." Harper froze, caught off guard by the calm authority. For a moment, his hand wavered, but pride overtook reason. With a sharp click, he unholstered his Glock, pointing it through the window at Marcus's temple. The street seemed to still. A neighbor gasped, her phone trembling in her hand. Marcus didn't move, his eyes locked on Harper's, not the barrel. "You're pointing a weapon at an active-duty officer," he said, his voice steady as stone. "Do you understand the implications?" Harper's grip tightened, his knuckles whitening, but Marcus's calm was a wall he couldn't breach. The confrontation had begun, and with it, a test of justice that would echo far beyond Willow Creek. The Glock trembled slightly in Officer Harper's hand, not from fear but from a wounded ego. Marcus Evans sat motionless, his gaze unwavering, a soldier's discipline holding firm against the chaos of Harper's escalating aggression. The summer air was heavy, the silence between the two men a battlefield of its own. Across the street, more neighbors gathered, phones raised, capturing every second of the injustice unfolding. A woman whispered to her husband, "He's not moving." "Why isn't he moving?" But Marcus knew movement could be misread, and he wasn't here to give Harper an excuse. Harper's voice cracked with frustration. "Get out of the car. Now." His command was less about procedure and more about reclaiming control. Marcus's response was measured, almost academic. "Officer, you've provided no valid reason for this stop. No traffic violation, no suspicious behavior. I'm legally parked, waiting for my nephew. I request you cite legal grounds." His words were a shield, forged from years of navigating systems that demanded compliance over reason. Harper's face reddened. He wasn't trained for this, for someone who knew the law better than he did, who didn't flinch under pressure. He leaned closer, the gun's barrel inches from the glass. "I don't need your permission to do my job," he spat, his voice shaking with the weight of his own authority unraveling. Marcus's eyes flicked to the crowd, noting the growing number of cameras. A young man across the street typed rapidly on his phone, not filming but sending a message. Marcus recognized the subtle urgency, a veteran, perhaps, triggering a protocol Harper couldn't fathom. "I've served this nation longer than you've worn that badge," Marcus said, his tone calm but piercing. "I'm not your enemy. I'm asking you to follow the law you're sworn to uphold." The words landed like a challenge, not to Harper's power but to his understanding of it. Harper's hand shook, his pride clashing with the reality of a man who refused to be intimidated. He scribbled furiously in his notepad, though no one believed it was procedure. It was a desperate attempt to assert dominance over a situation slipping from his grasp. The crowd grew restless, their murmurs rising. A woman in her 60s, clutching a grocery bag, stepped closer, her phone recording. "He's not doing anything wrong," she called out, her voice trembling but firm. A teenager nearby nodded, his camera steady. The community was waking up, their collective gaze a silent demand for justice. Marcus saw it, felt it, but kept his focus on Harper. He knew this wasn't just about him, it was about every person who'd faced a gun for no reason, whose silence was mistaken for defiance. Harper's radio crackled, a faint voice asking for status. He ignored it, his eyes locked on Marcus. "You think you're above me?" he hissed, the gun still raised. Marcus shook his head slowly. "I'm not above you. I'm asking you to be better than this." The words stung, not because they were loud but because they were true. Harper's breath quickened, his control fraying. He didn't see a colonel, a veteran, a man with a family. He saw a challenge to his authority, and that was all his training had prepared him to confront. In Marcus's pocket, a small device, barely noticeable, vibrated once. He didn't reach for it, but he knew what it meant. A signal had been sent, a protocol activated. Somewhere, far from this quiet street, a system designed to protect those who serve was stirring. Harper, oblivious, pressed the gun closer, his voice a low growl. "Last chance. Get out." Marcus's response was a quiet refusal, a stand for dignity that no weapon could break. The street held its breath, waiting for what came next. The standoff on Willow Creek's quiet street had reached a tipping point. Officer Daniel Harper's Glock hovered inches from Colonel Marcus Evans's forehead, the barrel's shadow stark against the SUV's window. Marcus's hands remained on his thighs, his posture unshaken, his eyes steady. He wasn't just a man in a car, he was a symbol of resilience, a soldier who'd faced worse than this and emerged unbroken. The crowd, now a dozen strong, recorded every moment, their phones a chorus of silent witnesses. A young woman across the street whispered to her friend, "He's not scared. Look at him." Harper's voice broke the tense silence. "You're making this worse for yourself," he said, his tone more desperate than commanding. Marcus's response was a calm recitation of principle. "You're holding a firearm on an unarmed officer in uniform, with no stated cause. This isn't law enforcement, it's escalation. I'm asking you, again, to stand down." His words were a lifeline, offering Harper a chance to retreat. But Harper, trapped by his own pride, couldn't hear it. Unseen by Harper, Marcus's left hand moved deliberately, brushing the edge of his uniform pocket. Inside was a small, unassuming device, a military-grade emergency beacon. With 2 subtle presses, Marcus activated it, sending a silent signal to a Pentagon coordination hub 120 miles away. The device didn't flash or beep, but its message was clear: a strategic officer was under threat. Within seconds, a console in Arlington lit up, flagging, "Colonel Marcus Evans, Code Gray, immediate threat." The system, built for moments like this, kicked into gear. Across the street, a veteran named Sarah, who'd served under Marcus years ago, recognized his calm under pressure. She tapped out a code on her phone, triggering a secondary alert to the Department of Defense's Strategic Officer Safety Center. The neighborhood's collective outrage was growing, their recording spreading online with hashtags like #JusticeForWillow Creek. A man in his 40s, filming from his porch, murmured, "This ain't right. He's just sitting there." The community's unity was palpable, their shared resolve a quiet force. Harper, unaware of the signals racing through secure networks, leaned closer, his gun unsteady. "I'm giving you one more chance," he said, his voice cracking. Marcus's eyes didn't waver. "You're not giving chances, you're breaking protocol. I'm a U.S. Army colonel, protected under federal statute. You need to lower that weapon." His words were a legal anchor, grounding the moment in reason. Harper's hand shook, his authority unraveling under the weight of Marcus's composure. Far from Willow Creek, a silver unmarked SUV left Fort Myer, carrying 3 plainclothes agents, one from Homeland Security, one from the Pentagon's Incident Response Division, and one from the Strategic Officer Protection Unit. Their mission was clear: neutralize the situation without escalation. The vehicle moved silently, no sirens, no haste, but with a purpose that outranked local jurisdiction. Back on the street, a young officer, Officer Jenna Ruiz, stepped from Harper's cruiser, her body cam recording. She hesitated, her eyes flicking between Harper's gun and Marcus's calm demeanor. "Daniel," she said softly, "this isn't right. Stand down." Harper ignored her, his focus locked on Marcus, who represented everything he couldn't control. But the system was moving now, faster than Harper could comprehend. In Arlington, a screen displayed Marcus's biometric data, heart rate steady at 70 bpm, no adrenaline spikes. The assessment was clear: full situational awareness, no panic. Marcus wasn't a victim, he was a benchmark of discipline under threat. The crowd's recordings, now trending online, amplified the moment, drawing eyes from beyond Fairview. The stage was set for a reckoning, not just for Harper, but for a system that had let this moment arrive. The summer air in Willow Creek hung heavy, the tension palpable as Officer Daniel Harper's Glock remained pointed at Colonel Marcus Evans's forehead. Marcus sat unmoved in his SUV, his hands still on his thighs, his gaze steady, embodying a dignity that refused to bend. The crowd, now nearly 20 strong, recorded the scene, their phones capturing every tremble of Harper's hand. A woman in a yellow sundress whispered, "He's not backing down," her voice a mix of awe and fear. Across the street, a young man posted a clip online, the hashtag Willow Creek standoff gaining traction. Unseen by Harper, the system Marcus had activated was closing in. A silver unmarked SUV rolled silently onto the street, its matte finish absorbing the sunlight. No sirens, no plates, just an understated authority that made a nearby officer pause. 3 plainclothes agents stepped out, their dark coats unadorned, save for subtle black bands on their left arms, symbols of interagency command. The lead agent, a woman in her late 40s with sharp eyes, scanned the scene, her earpiece relaying real-time data from the Pentagon. Harper's radio crackled, but he ignored it, his focus locked on Marcus. "You think you're untouchable?" he spat, his voice fraying. Marcus's response was calm, deliberate. "I'm not untouchable. I'm protected by the law you're breaking." His words were a quiet rebuke, grounding the moment in reason. The lead agent approached, her voice low but commanding. "Officer Harper, lower your weapon. This scene is under federal jurisdiction." Harper froze, his gun wavering, his authority crumbling under the weight of her words. The younger officer, Jenna Ruiz, stepped forward, her hands raised in a calming gesture. "Daniel, listen to them," she urged, her voice steady despite her unease. Harper's eyes darted to the agents, then back to Marcus, who remained still, his military ID visible in his hand. The second agent, a man with a clipped beard, held up a device displaying a red LED. "Strategic override protocol," he said. "Your command is terminated." No shouting, no threats, just a statement that stripped Harper of control. Marcus opened his SUV door, stepping out with measured grace. The crowd murmured, a mix of relief and admiration. He didn't speak, didn't gesture, just stood tall, his uniform a testament to his service. The third agent nodded to him, a silent acknowledgement of his restraint. "Colonel Evans, we're ready," she said softly. Marcus adjusted his cuff, his composure a beacon of dignity. The crowd parted as he walked toward the agent's vehicle, not as a victim, but as a man who'd held his ground. Harper's hand dropped, the Glock hanging limply. His face flushed, not with rage but with the dawning realization that he'd lost more than a confrontation. The agents didn't cuff him, didn't raise their voices. Their presence was enough. The street, once a stage for Harper's misplaced authority, now belonged to a higher system, one that valued justice over pride. As Marcus entered the vehicle, a neighbor whispered, "That's what strength looks like." The moment marked a turning point, a shift toward accountability that no one could ignore. Daniel Harper stood alone on Willow Creek Street, his Glock now holstered, his badge a hollow symbol. The silver SUV carrying Colonel Marcus Evans had vanished, leaving a crowd of onlookers and their unrelenting cameras. Harper's chest heaved, sweat beading on his forehead. He'd been trained to control scenes, to demand compliance, but today, he'd been outranked by a system he didn't understand. The young officer, Jenna Ruiz, avoided his gaze, her body cam still recording. "You should go, Daniel," she said quietly, her words heavy with resignation. Harper's story began in a small Virginia town, where he'd grown up idolizing the authority of a badge. At 21, after a knee injury ended his college football dreams, he joined the Fairview Police Academy, drawn to the power of a uniform. His instructors praised his physical presence and quick reactions, never questioning his reliance on instinct over reason. He excelled in simulations, drawing his weapon in under a second, but no one taught him to pause, to verify, to see a person before a threat. By 29, he was a patrol officer in Fairview, a city with loose oversight and a history of complaints swept under the rug. In Willow Creek, Harper had thrived in an environment that rewarded control over dialogue. Residents recalled his stare, cold and unyielding, turning routine stops into confrontations. A single mother once reported being cited for suspicious loitering while waiting for her son's school bus. A teenager was detained for evasive behavior after glancing at Harper's cruiser. No lawsuit stuck, no reports gained traction. Harper knew the rules well enough to skirt them. But today, facing Marcus Evans, his tactics had failed. Marcus's calm, his refusal to bow, had exposed Harper's training as a flaw, not a strength. The interagency team's arrival marked the end of Harper's command. Hours later, he was summoned to the Fairview Police Department's briefing room. Chief Laura Bennett, her face grim, slid a single sheet across the table. "You're suspended pending federal review," she said, her voice flat. Harper's protests, "I didn't know he was military, I felt threatened," were met with silence. The chief's eyes betrayed her frustration, not just with Harper but with a system that had let him escalate unchecked. Harper's life unraveled quickly. Social media erupted with #Willow Creek Standoff, his name trending alongside clips of his gun aimed at Marcus. Neighbors shunned him, colleagues avoided his calls. His wife, a teacher, faced whispers at work, her students asking if her husband was the bad cop. Harper's 12-year-old daughter came home crying after classmates taunted her. He wanted to fight, to defend his actions, but the interagency summons to Arlington's Room 4C loomed. The notice, a plain sheet with a QR code, offered no appeal, no explanation, just a command to appear. In Room 4C, for officials waited, their questions precise. Why didn't you verify his identity? Why draw a weapon with no threat? Harper's answers, "I reacted, I followed protocol," crumbled under their scrutiny. "You failed to recognize a protected officer," one said. "That's not a reflex. That's a failure of judgment." Harper left the room stripped of his badge, barred from carrying a firearm, his career over. The system hadn't just punished him, it had exposed him as a product of its own flaws, a man trained to dominate rather than protect. In the wake of Willow Creek, Fairview's police department faced a reckoning. An interagency task force descended, their tablets syncing with every camera in the area, traffic lights, residential doorbells, even a bus dash cam. They found what local servers couldn't: pristine footage of the incident, preserved by a Pentagon override. Every frame, from Harper's approach to Marcus's calm response, was tagged and analyzed, not for prosecution but for systemic reform. The task force's report was blunt: Harper's actions stemmed from training that prioritized speed over scrutiny. Colonel Marcus Evans, now back in Navy Hill, wrote a private report, not for the press but for the Department of Defense. His words were measured, piercing. "The officer didn't fail alone," he wrote. "He was trained to see silence as defiance, not dignity. How many others are taught the same?" His questions: why do we train officers to draw first? Who teaches them to see a person, not a threat, echoed in military and police circles, sparking quiet debates. Marcus didn't seek fame, he sought change, his dignity a catalyst for reflection. The task force's findings reached the Pentagon's Strategic Behavioral Intelligence Division. Analysts pored over data: Harper's elevated heart rate, Marcus's steady pulse, the crowd's growing outrage. The report flagged a systemic issue: officers weren't trained to recognize military credentials or to de-escalate with disciplined individuals. A recommendation emerged: mandatory interagency training for police in high-risk zones. Fairview's chief, Laura Bennett, read the report in silence, her hands trembling. She knew her department had failed Marcus, and countless others, long before that day. In Willow Creek, residents gathered at a community center, their phones now tools of advocacy. A retiree spoke up: "If he wasn't a colonel, would we be here?" The question hung heavy, uniting the crowd in a shared demand for justice. They didn't want apologies, they wanted reform. Online, #Willow Creek Standoff trended, not as outrage but as a call for accountability. Marcus's report, though private, leaked to a police academy forum, its questions prompting instructors to pause. One added a new drill: what if the person in front of you knows their rights better than you? The incident's ripple effect reached beyond Fairview. Military bases began reviewing civilian interaction protocols, emphasizing recognition of service members. Police academies in neighboring states quietly updated use of force training, adding scenarios where calmness wasn't a threat. Marcus, unaware of his full impact, returned to his routine, driving Tyler to school, his silence louder than any speech. The system was waking up, forced to confront its blind spots by a man who'd stood firm, his dignity a mirror reflecting truths too long ignored. In the quiet halls of Capitol Hill, a rare bipartisan effort took shape, sparked by the Willow Creek incident. Representative Clara Hayes, a Republican from Georgia, and Representative Jamal Carter, a Democrat from Oregon, sat across from each other in a nondescript conference room. Their usual ideological divide was absent, replaced by a shared resolve to address what had happened to Colonel Marcus Evans. The draft bill, titled the Military Personnel Civilian Protection Act, was born not from public outcry but from a quiet understanding, a system that allowed a decorated officer to face a gun for no reason needed to change. The bill's clauses were precise, forged over 5 intense days. It mandated annual training for law enforcement on recognizing military credentials, prohibited use of force against non-threatening individuals in uniform, and required immediate interagency oversight for any incident involving strategic personnel. A key line stood out: no service member should fear a weapon drawn by those sworn to protect them. The advisory team included veterans, legal scholars, and a former police chief who'd seen too many escalations. They didn't mention Marcus by name, but his silence loomed large, a catalyst for reform. Hayes, a former military spouse, spoke at the drafting session. "This isn't about privilege, it's about ensuring those who serve aren't punished for their discipline." Carter, whose brother was a veteran, nodded. "If calmness is misread as defiance, the fault lies in training, not the individual." The bill gained quiet traction, with lawmakers from both parties signing on, aware that opposing it risked aligning with Officer Harper's actions. A Virginia senator, reading the draft, underlined a clause: "Incidents involving military personnel trigger federal review within 24 hours." In the margin, he wrote, "This is late, but necessary." The Willow Creek community followed the news, their phones now tools of advocacy. A local pastor, whose sermon went viral, said, "Justice isn't just for colonels, it's for everyone who's ever been misjudged." The bill's preamble echoed this, emphasizing unity and dignity across all who serve. Military bases began circulating the draft, with officers like Major Sarah Lynn, who'd alerted the Pentagon during the incident, feeling a quiet pride. The system was listening, not because of protests, but because one man's restraint had forced it to look inward. Willow Creek's community center buzzed with purpose 2 weeks after the incident. Residents packed the room, their faces a mix of anger, hope, and determination. A retired teacher, Ms. Evelyn Carter, stood at the podium, her voice steady. "We saw what happened to Colonel Evans. We recorded it. Now, we demand better." The crowd nodded, their shared experience forging a bond stronger than any petition. They weren't just neighbors, they were witnesses to a truth that couldn't be erased. The forum, organized by a local youth group, became a platform for healing and action. A teenager, Malik, who'd filmed the standoff, spoke up. "I thought he'd get shot. But he didn't move, and that saved him." His words sparked murmurs of agreement. A mother added, "If he wasn't a colonel, would we be here?" The question hung heavy, uniting the room in a shared mission, to ensure no one, colonel or civilian, faced a gun for existing. The community drafted a letter to the Fairview Police Department, demanding transparency and reform. Colonel Marcus Evans attended, not as a speaker but as a neighbor. When asked to speak, he stood, his voice calm. "This isn't about me. It's about us, standing together, demanding dignity for all." His words, simple yet profound, galvanized the room. Residents began organizing watch groups, training to use their phones as tools of accountability. A local business owner, Mr. Patel, offered free Wi-Fi to stream footage, ensuring no incident went unseen. The hashtag Willow Creek United trended, a symbol of solidarity. The police department, under pressure, held a public meeting. Chief Laura Bennett admitted, "We failed. We're reviewing our training. Residents pushed back, asking for specifics, new de-escalation protocols, bias training, community oversight. Bennett nodded, promising change, but the crowd's resolve was clear: promises weren't enough. Marcus, watching silently, saw a community no longer afraid to speak. Their unity, born from his stand, was a quiet victory, proving justice could grow from shared resolve. Daniel Harper's life had unraveled since Willow Creek. His badge gone, his name a hashtag of shame, he faced isolation. Neighbors avoided him, his daughter's school friends whispered. At home, his wife, Emily, sat quietly, her eyes heavy with unspoken questions. Harper, once proud of his authority, now saw its cost. The interagency summons had stripped his career, but the silence from his community cut deeper. He wasn't a monster, he told himself, but a product of a system that rewarded control over compassion. One evening, Harper found a flyer for a police retraining program, slipped under his door by an anonymous neighbor. It wasn't pity, it was a challenge. He enrolled, driven not by hope but by a need to understand his failure. The program, led by a former officer-turned-reformer, focused on empathy, de-escalation, and recognizing bias. Harper sat in the back, silent, as instructors dissected cases like his. "You drew because you felt challenged," one said. "But challenge isn't threat." Harper nodded, the words sinking in. Through weeks of training, Harper faced his past. He recalled stopping the single mother, detaining the teenager, moments he'd justified as protocol. Now, he saw them as failures of judgment. In role plays, he practiced pausing, asking questions, seeing people, not suspects. A trainer, a black veteran, shared his own story of being profiled. "I could have been Colonel Evans," he said. Harper's throat tightened, the weight of his actions clearer than ever. By the program's end, Harper wasn't reinstated, but he was different. He volunteered at a community center, teaching youth about de-escalation, his voice softer, his eyes less guarded. Willow Creek residents noticed, some offering cautious nods. His daughter smiled again, proud of her father's effort. Harper's journey wasn't redemption in full, but a step toward it, mirroring a system beginning to rethink its roots. His transformation showed that change, though slow, was possible when accountability met willingness to learn. Colonel Marcus Evans stood on his porch in Navy Hill, the late summer sun casting long shadows. His nephew, Tyler, bounded out, backpack slung over his shoulder, grinning. "Ready for school, Uncle Marcus?" Marcus nodded, his smile warm but tempered by memory. The Willow Creek incident hadn't faded, but it had transformed into a law, a movement, a community reborn. Marcus didn't seek the spotlight, his silence had already spoken louder than any speech. The Military Personnel Civilian Protection Act passed quietly, its clauses now shaping police training nationwide. Officers learned to recognize military IDs, to pause before drawing, to see discipline as strength, not defiance. Fairview's police department, under Chief Bennett, implemented bias training and community oversight, earning cautious trust from residents. Willow Creek's forums continued, a model for other towns. Marcus's report, though private, had seeped into academy curriculums, its questions: why draw on the comm? Who teaches officers to see, reshaping how force was taught? Marcus returned to his routine, driving Tyler to school, attending veteran meetings. He declined a White House medal, sending a note: honor isn't in awards, it's in change. His porch became a quiet haven, where neighbors stopped to share stories of reform. One evening, Ms. Evelyn Carter visited, her eyes bright. "You made us see we could fight for justice," she said. Marcus nodded, his silence a bridge between past and future. The system wasn't perfect, but it was listening. Harper's retraining, the community's unity, the bill's passage, all traced back to Marcus's stand. He didn't need applause, he needed a world where no one faced a gun for being still. As he watched Tyler run off to class, Marcus felt a quiet hope. Justice wasn't a moment, it was a commitment, built by those who stood firm. Thank you, friends, for joining this journey. Marcus's story reminds us that dignity and unity can rewrite even the most flawed systems. Share this tale, not to praise one man, but to inspire action. Advocate for fairness, support reform, and remember, calmness is resistance, and justice is a collective effort. Let's ensure no one's worth is questioned at gunpoint again. Keep pushing for a world where dignity prevails. Together, we can make it real. Colonel Marcus Evans's story is a testament to the power of quiet resolve. His unwavering dignity in the face of a drawn gun forced a nation to confront its flaws, sparking a law that protects those who serve and a community that found its voice. The Military Personnel Civilian Protection Act, born from his silence, ensures officers are trained to see discipline, not defiance, in those they encounter. Willow Creek's residents, united by their recordings, transformed outrage into advocacy, proving that justice thrives when communities stand together. Marcus's legacy isn't in medals but in a system forced to rewrite itself, prioritizing dignity over dominance. Let his story inspire us to demand fairness, to stand firm, and to build a world where no one's worth is questioned at gunpoint.